I have lupus. I have acute lupus. I had a pulmonary embolism in 2010. That's how I found out I had lupus. I was in the hospital for 7 days. Up until 2015, I had never smoked marijuana or ingested marijuana or did anything with marijuana. So I had spent from 2010 to 2015 being incredibly sick. They had me on 11 pills, 5 of which were opioids. So tramadol, hydrocodone, hydromorphine, Oxycontin, and fentanyl patches to manage the pain in my body. I bet you everybody here has somebody in their life, if not themselves, who suffer from a chronic illness or some type of chronic pain. I hadn't worked for 5 years. I was pretty much bedridden. And I was 42, and I thought, wow, like if I'm taking 11 pills today, how many pills am I taking when I'm 65? And so I started to look for health alternatives. And if you would have told me when I started that search it would be cannabis, I would have laughed at you because I would have been like, there's no way. But as I did my research, I kept coming back to this thing called CBD. Does anybody here, how many people here know what CBD is? Oh, this is good. Awesome. So I started to do a regimen of really high CBD, which is a non-psychoactive part of the plant. So for those of you who don't know, there's the cannabis plant, and THC is the psychoactive, so that's what actually makes you feel high, and CBD is the non-psychoactive. It doesn't make you feel high, but it definitely helps your body. And so I started to do a huge regimen of CBD. It took me about 9 months, 6 months to get off all of the 11 pills, and 9 months to get off the infusions every month. But since September of 2015, I've not taken a single synthetic drug for my lupus. Yay! And so this is why I'm such a huge advocate for both medicinal cannabis, but also adult use cannabis. I run 2 dispensaries right now, one in Portland and one in Oakland. We used to have one in San Francisco. We're getting licensed for that now. And one of the things that I learned being in this business about adult use marijuana was that people are always treating something. Even if they don't know it. And what I find is that I would say that 75% of our adult use patients are actually treating either anxiety, PTSD. We have a large contingent of veterans. We have a large contingent of elder people who are in a lot of pain. So one of the things that I would tell you as you get into adult use is to really think about adult use as an extension of medicinal. You can really see, like when people come in, we take a lot of time with our client. And we'll tell them, like, how are you feeling? What are you doing today? What do you feel like doing? And usually they'll tell you something. They'll say, I have a lot of anxiety today, or I'm feeling depressed today, or my joints are hurting. And we can definitely tell them, even if they're not medical patients, we can be like, oh, well, we have this thing particularly for you to use. So I would tell you, as you think about adult use, think about it as an extension. The other thing I would tell you about cannabis and where you are right now in your legislation, your budget talks, and then eventually the regulations that are going to come down from the Cannabis Commission, is to really think about how to have this work for your county. Do you have, yes, right there. Okay, great. One of the things that we always like to tell people is, like, a lot of counties, like especially like when we were starting up in the Bay, were very resident. They were like afraid, like, the bad element, or like, having to do a lot of enforcement or all of that things. And what they don't really realize is that the 4 big prongs of the cannabis industry, which are cultivation, those who grow it, manufacturing, those who create products from it, distribution, and retail, are really a very small piece of the cannabis industry. All of these
It's hard for them to see in the back, so you might have to describe it.
Sure. So in here it has like the center where the 4 main prongs are, and then as you go out to things that are going to be supporting dispensaries and the manufacturing and distribution. So all of these jobs, such as CPAs, such as entertainment, such as lawyers, software engineers, people who are glass blowers, arts and community, those actually support a dispensary. There's about 85 other industries that have to support the cannabis industry, otherwise we don't succeed. And so that's exciting for people who don't necessarily want to be part of the cannabis industry, but want to have an industry that feeds into the cannabis industry. So I would tell you as counties that these are some of the things that you can consider. as being part of things that you can add into your communities and into your industry and into your businesses in your local areas. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, we can take
Oh.
questions at the end.
Okay.
I want to do questions at the end.
Okay.
They'll have lots.
Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to say, so my part was to tell you, like, when you're thinking about cannabis, don't put it in the frame of what we were taught, which is propaganda, really, around like reefer madness, Cheech and Chong. I'm like, we all come up from that. That really is not what cannabis is about. Cannabis really is a medicinal thing. Even in adult use, I find it to be medicinal, and it can help so many people in your communities. Even like folks who are in elder communities that are taking a lot of synthetic drugs. We have people with arthritis that we're able to help with topicals, which also don't get them high. And so, and don't get me wrong, if you want to get high, I don't have anything wrong with that. It's just not how I use cannabis personally, but there is a medicinal use, even for the psychoactive part. So for THC, a lot of that helps stuff like nausea, people who are unable to eat, people who are dizzy, suffer from vertigo. Every part of the plant is useful, and it's worth having in your communities. Regulated, of course, not just open, but also really it's a very helpful thing. It's a very medicinal thing, and it also is going to bring a lot of money. Stringer, $3.1 billion in the first year is the predicted sale for New York State. That's $620 million at a 20% tax. I didn't know about the extra 2%, so go y'all. So it is a very, very lucrative industry. It's going to be about worth $500 billion by 2022 across all the states. And if it becomes deregulated across federally, it will come off of a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 2 drug, which will bring even more money into the U.S. And what's really important, I think, especially for New York State, is that you have a lot of farmers here. And you'll be able to export and import, which will be really big for you. And then the other thing is to understand this. CBD, cannabis itself is an exit drug out of opioid addiction, and I can tell you that firsthand. But also, it is it's been miraculous for me and pretty much everybody that I know who has lupus, because I belong to all the lupus groups back in the Bay Area. I belong to the people who have lupus, people who are depressed because they have lupus, like all the stuff I used to belong to. I've helped so many people get off of that regimen that is normally put together for lupus. And so what we really see is that where even though the growth of the cannabis plant itself is going to be huge, the growth of CBD plants, which are a little bit different than just the THC CBD, is going to be huge. And in order to explain that to you, that last year, so in the history of marijuana research, we've spent $20 million, federal and private, since the beginning of marijuana. Last year, if you times that by 100,000, so in 2018, that's how much we spent on opioids through pharmacies. So I want you to really think about, beyond the adult use, what that's going to look like when people start to really understand that CBD can replace a lot of these addictive drugs. Your farmers are going to have to do a lot of CBD, because that's one of the things. You really can't synthesize cannabis. They've tried for many years. They can't do it. They can't do it to the level of what a plant that grows from the ground, that has the nutrients of the ground. So really think about how that transition will be for your farmers when you have entire swaths of farmers, small and large, growing CBD plants so that they can distill it into oil so that they can give it to people like me who do not want to take synthetic medication. So there's a lot to think about here. I hope to hear your questions later, and thank you so much for letting me speak.